Alrighty, welcome aboard. Thank you for tuning in to the Heavy Metal Truckers. As you guys can see, we are your hosts. I am Pincushion, that is Doppler, and we have a new co-host with us today, Frosty, which we're going to have another video, hopefully before too much longer, explaining what the hell he's doing here. Aside from now being a fellow trucker, finally.
About time.
About
Yep.
Speak a little bit louder.
Newly minted.
Yeah, there you go. Do what now?
Newly minted trucker, yeah.
Exactly. So, we are doing this video because Nightwish has come out with a new album. What was on the 22nd?
The 20th.
20th? Okay, so it's been a few days since it came out.
Yep.
This video is probably not going to go live till another couple days because just timing and everything. But I figured we'd go ahead and do this because this is a pretty big release as far as like the entirety of the metal genre goes. Like it's, even though it's it is more of one of the subgenres, it is pretty much everyone has come to understand that essentially Nightwish and, would you say to an extent, Apocalyptica has basically given a gold standard in the bar as to which symphonic metal is set at.
You know, when people think of symphonic metal, Nightwish is usually the first band they think of. Apocalyptica, maybe. A lot of people will think, a lot of people think Epica. Even with a notation, even though I still consider them more of a gothic metal band, but they do use a lot of symphonic elements. But
so since you are new to how we do things, what we do is we typically give a background of how we got into or how we discovered the said group that we're discussing. And that's what we do before we go into more of like our analysis or, yeah, it was good. Because sometimes we go very general, sometimes if it's a group we know, or things just stand out because the composition is so great, we might go more detailed.
Okay.
And then at the end, we give a rating for the album, and we do accept the half, quarter, and three-quarter scale. So it's not like just 7, 8, we do 7, 7.25, 7.5, whatever.
Okay.
So, Doppler, since this is your favorite group, obviously, and the way we typically go things, go ahead.
For me, I think we also just said this when we did the couple of reactions we did a Nightwish song as well, even though they were mainly for you. But I discovered Nightwish 03, 04 time frame, somewhere around there, completely by accident, or might have been one of my friends sent me one of their songs. I don't remember, but I've been addicted ever since. The Once album came out a year or so after I discovered them, and I've been a massive fan ever since. But yeah, no, so I mean, I've been there through all the changes within the band, from all 3 different lead singers, different drummers, of course, now Marco's gone. So now we got a new bassist, Troy, joining the band. So from the time I started listening, Impu and Tomas were the only original people left. But that being said, you still instantly recognize who it is because this is Tomas's baby. But they pretty quickly after discovering became one of my favorite bands, and over time have become what I would consider my favorite band.
I gotcha. So, you'll have to forgive me, I'm also doing the mute on our end just because we have other background noise going on and trying to diminish or lessen any kind of feedback that may occur. So,
Heard anything yet, but I don't know what it'll sound like when you go through and edit it.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, so we will go on to what your perception of the album was from like each individual track, and then I guess collectively as a whole if you see fit.
So what was it, about 3 months ago, maybe? I don't even know. They came out with the first song, the first single, which was "Perfume of the Timeless." And my first impressions of it was that it was decent, but it didn't blow me away. And like many others at the time, I thought the mixing was a little weird, especially during the chorus. Are you laughing at me? Oh, him. You know, so I kind of had mixed feelings on that one. And then about a month ago, they had The Day Of come out, which I much preferred over Perfume of the Timeless. It wasn't necessarily a heavy song. It was definitely a little bit of a different avenue for them. It had kind of an 80s feel, as anybody's listened to it knows. But I still enjoyed it more. I enjoyed the child's choir. I thought that was a cool addition to the song during the refrain or the chorus. And then a few days before the album came out, they put out Ocean of Strange Islands, which was amazing. It more or less what I would expect from Nightwish. And what reason why, like, it's a good example of why I became a fan of Nightwish. And then when the day the album came out, they came out with Lantern Light, which was very different. That's one thing I can say about all 4 songs they put out, is they're all very different from each other. You know, you had Perfume of the Timeless, which to me felt, out of all the songs on the album, even once you go through and listen to it, it felt like a kind of a continuation, sound-wise or musically, of Human Nature. Whereas none of the rest felt like that. But Lantern Light was a softer song. It had more emotion to it. I've heard people saying that Tomas wrote it right after, was it right after his father passed away, or around that same time? So apparently it has some ties into that, which when you listen to the song Feel, you can kind of get a sense that could be true. Now, as in listening into the whole album, I had ordered the album, and initially my plan was to wait to listen to it until I got the album. But then after I ordered it the next day, I got a thing saying it was going to be delayed several days. I'm like, all right, I can't wait.
So sorry to interrupt you, but on that, I ordered, or I think I told you I ordered the new Opeth album. Apparently, it was going to be coming out sometime in October. That's been pushed out to like the end of November because of manufacturing delays.
Oh, jeez. I can't say it. Well, I guess I can see that. But anyway, so I listened to the album, and the first song, Yesterwynde. It's not Yesterwynde, it's Yesterwynde. I know a lot of people, including myself, when I first saw it, was thinking Yesterwynde, but no, it's Yesterwynde, which I know was a word that Tomas and Troy made up. It's a word that they created. But anyway, I can't really explain what it means very well like they can. I know there's a video of Tomas talking about it if somebody wants to look it up. But Yesterwynde was an interesting intro. Had a cool little feel to it. I thought it did a decent job of setting the stage for the album. Then you got The Ocean Strange Tides, which, like I said, is one of my favorites on the album still. Arguably one of the heaviest songs on the album. And it's I can't really think of a good word to describe it other than, like I said before, it's kind of like what I came to expect to Nightwish, or what I was hoping for, I guess. And then you get to the, I don't even know how to pronounce that, Antikythera mechanism.
I know, at first whenever I saw it, I'm like, did they rip off some track name from like an industrial group?
Now, do you know what that mechanism is? It's a real thing.
No, because I thought it was just some random made-up word, to be honest.
No, it's a real thing. If I remember correctly, it's Greek. It's considered the very first computer ever, and it was from back in Greek times. And it was a mechanism, you can look it up online, that was used, if I remember correctly, it was the Greeks anyway, used to be able to calculate positions of the planets and the stars and everything in the sky is what it was for. So it's a ancient mechanism that was often considered the first computer ever. That song, trying to remember it really, even though I've listened to the album twice, but if I remember correctly, it had kind of like a haunting feel to it, which was kind of cool. And I remembered I really enjoyed the song. I felt like it was a good follow-up to Oceans of Strange Islands. You know, leave it to Tomas to make a song about a ancient, you know, mechanism, machine, computer, thingy-madoober. Then you got the Day Of, which, like I said before, it had a kind of like a 80s synth feel to it, which was kind of interesting. I've never really heard Nightwish do something like that before. So that was kind of interesting and in a way kind of cool because it showed some creativity on their end. I really enjoyed the children's choir in it. The music video was weird. I don't know if any of y'all seen it, but it's weird. But overall, I enjoyed that song. Like, it was a good, solid song. Then you get to the first release, Perfume of the Timeless. Now, I will say, like I said, when the first single first came out, I wasn't really sure how I overall felt about it. I mean, it was a decent song, but it didn't blow me away. Wasn't the biggest fan of the mixing, especially during the choruses. On the album, I don't know what was different, but the mixing didn't feel as bad. Like, I felt like I could understand.
Majority of the time, whenever groups release a single, like, as the very first thing, that's, from the way I have heard things, that's kind of before it goes into the mastering phase. Like, it might get a general mastering, but it doesn't get the full-on mastering. That way, whenever you hear the album, it can be either even better, or it can be like, what the fuck did you guys do? Because there was an old single from Bullet, and that we're talking maybe, not Timber Timber, but it might have been Fever, that I can't remember. There was a track that they had released as a single, and it sounded pretty damn good, but once we got it, it had been sparkled with all this extra crap that was completely unnecessary.
It sounds like it could have been begging for mercy.
Yeah, and it just, I think it was because in the intro it felt like old school Bullet, like between Screaming Fire and The Poison.
Yeah.
And then whenever they finished it and released it, it's like, what the hell? Why did you guys make this radio edit?
It kind of just got blended so well into the album that it kind of just disappeared and lost all of its, like,
Exactly.
It's splendor from when it was first released.
Yeah, so I mean, I have yet to find a single or track that whenever they release it, it turns out to be the exact same that's on the album, like once it passes through the Golden Master.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so I did just notice, because you made me start thinking, the music video was a minute shorter than the album version.
Oh, is it?
I'm not surprised by that in a way. Oh wait, no, it's not. No, it's not. I was looking at the wrong song. I apologize. It's about the same length.
Well done.
I was looking at the wrong song. I apologize. So no, it is about the same length. Even though I wouldn't have been surprised if it was shorter, because that's not necessarily an uncommon thing for bands to do either. But yeah, I noticed that it definitely was clear, and it could be for the reason that you're saying. It's very possible. Which it made it a better listen than it did with the single and the music video. That being said, if I had to pick a least favorite song on the album, it probably is it, which is interesting because I put it out first. And I'm sure there's people out there who would be like, that was my favorite. I have no doubt, which is fine.
Well, I mean, that's becoming a thing. So, I mean, even whenever, if we go back to the Kitty release, whenever they first released Eyes Wide Open, just balls to the wall, old school feel that made all of us just thank God they didn't change. And then they had released We Are Shadows, and it's like, oh, okay, so it's like they can step into a modern aspect but still hold their history.
Right.
And then they came out with one foot in the fucking grave, and what the hell? And then everyone was like, this is amazing. I love this kitty. They've progressed so well. And I'm like, no, they radio friendly the shit, and it sounds horrible.
Exactly
Again,
what.
our own perspectives when we talk about this, but I like things. I like guitars and groups that sound like they're trudging through the dirt and they're barely trying to hold on to dear life, and that's the sound I like.
Yeah, when you hit the nail on the head with a Kitty song, is that one was a radio. I don't want to say radio friendly, but that's what it was. It was a song that we're meant to sing along with and have fun, which nothing wrong with that. It's just when you consider what the previous songs were, and even a lot of the rest of that songs on that album, it was kind of out of place in a way.
It falls so short of the rest of the material, especially I Still Wear This Crown, because that was a solid, just absolute.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Not structured, but it was just solid, undeniable, raw groove metal.
Yep. But anywho, back to the Nightwish album. But yeah, Perfume Timeless. The other thing with Perfume Timeless, which I had already, don't know if that's cats or Abby's moving, but anyway, Perfume Timeless is to me, it was the only song on the album that felt to me like a continuation of Human Nature. Like that song could have fit on Human Nature easily and would have fit. I'm not saying it didn't fit on this album. It was the only one that just gave me that feeling. Then you get to Sway, which if I remember, Sway was a softer song again. It was a decent song. It was kind of like Perfume. It didn't blow me away, even though I do know there were a lot of people who really loved that song. And I can see why, but from my personal taste, they have better, softer songs. Like, to me, Lantern Light was a better, softer song than Sway was. Then you got the Children of Atta. Probably in my top 3 favorite on the album. I love the fact that they brought in the I can't remember where they're from. Google, you are my friend. Tonga, I guess, from Tonga. I don't know, but they brought in natives from, where these children were actually. Because again, this is based on a real story. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, the Tongan castaways. So I guess they're from Tonga. They brought in actual people from, I guess it was Tonga, to do some of the vocals in the song, especially like at the beginning. For example, you heard, which I thought was a really cool little thing that they did there. Musically, it was heavier. It had a really good groove to it. And I like the fact that it's based on a true story about these, I think it was 15 kids, or maybe, how many kids was it? I don't even remember now. Oh, 6. Wow, I was 15 months. Okay. But yeah, they were stranded for 15 months on an uninhabited island and survived for 15 months on their own. And that's what the song's about. And so I thought it was a cool story, and I really enjoyed the song. Number 8, Something Whispered Followed Me. Even though it's 6 minutes and 40 seconds long, it was probably one of the more radio-friendly songs on there in terms of, like, it had a easy-to-follow chorus, that you could sing along to real well. It was very, for Nightwish anyway, it was kind of straightforward. I don't know if you'd say straightforward for some bands, but for them it was. And there was another song on here that had an 80s feel to it, and I can't remember which one it is. Do you all remember?
I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but
there was another one, I can't
there
remember.
There was one that had and I say 80s, and I'm pinging this to 80s because it was very old for the day. It was a very industrial 80s feel.
Yeah, I can't remember which
I
other
can't
song
remember
was.
which one it is, but it had more along the lines of an industrial aspect to it.
Yeah. And for that, it was probably in my bottom 3 favorite. Again, even though I say bottom 3, it was still a good song. Like, I didn't dislike it. Like, there's not a single song on here that I would come and say was a bad song. Then you had Spider Silk, which
Is that one? Oh, yeah.
might be in my other top 3.
Oh, it was Hidayeth.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I was debating between that and the Weave, and I couldn't remember. Okay. All right. But yeah, you got Spider Silk, which probably is in my other one of my top 3 in terms of favorite on the song. Or song. The album. I don't know. I couldn't really tell you why for that one. It was just, I don't know. I just enjoyed it.
So one thing went out because we were all listening to it in the car. The wife just was like saying this feels like this is a pretty amazing breakdown, and that's whenever I'm like, holy crap, that's actually the mirror image of Septic Flesh's Portrait of a Headless Man.
There was another song on here that somebody said sounded a hell of a lot like a song from Dimmu. And they actually even played the Dimmu version or song. And
Oh, from Dimmu
they were,
Borgir?
it might have been the Weave, but I'm not positive.
But
Then you get to the, I guess it's Hirith. I don't know. It almost looks like it's Gaelic or Welsh or Scottish or something. I don't know. And it had kind of a little bit of that feel to it too, if I remember right.
I am trying so damn hard to hold back on any comment I have until it gets to me.
Now, the Weave is the one song I remember the least about. I really don't remember a whole lot about that one. Was that the one that the dude said sounded a little bit like Dimmu Borgir?
It sounds a lot like the mid-album cycle, well, mid-career cycle of Cradle.
Okay, that might have. Okay, that's probably the one that he was talking
Or
about.
no, it does sound like Dimmu because it was on the album Prodigies.
He said the guy I was watching said the name of the song.
I know which one it is. Give me a moment. Or continue to talk and I'll blurt it out in the middle of your talking.
Yeah. Anyway, unfortunately, yeah, that's the one I remember least about. I need to go back and listen to it again. I know I'm terrible. What can I say? And then you got the Lantern Light, which I thought was a good finisher to the album. It was softer. It had a lot of emotion to it. Like I said before, I thought I had read or heard that something with Tomas's father passing away or something like that. Somebody will probably correct me in the comments.
Yo, it was the if it was, from what I'm thinking, although now that I actually think about it, what I'm remembering of it is actually from a black metal group. It was their EP. It was Advent Sorrow, but the only thing that comes to mind for Dimmu Borgir, because it's one of my main favorite from them, is Progenies of the Great Apocalypse off of Death Cult Armageddon. That's what I'm thinking about. Which, I haven't heard it in so long, I'm probably wrong on that.
I have to go back and watch the guys video again. Now, as a whole, I'll admit coming into the album, I kind of was all over the place as to what to expect, and what my feelings were going to be. Because when I remember with Human Nature, when it first came out, the very first time I listened to it, I loved it. But the more I listened to it, it like, for example, the first time I listened to it, I probably would have told you immediately this was probably my second favorite album they'd done. But over time, the more I listened to it, it fell to where it's probably kind of like middle of the road now for them. And I was never the biggest fan of Endless Forms Most Beautiful, with the exception of a few songs. So I was kind of like mixed going into this one, especially when I first heard Perfume. And then you had The Day Of, which was a little bit different for them. Then you had Ocean's Strange Ties, which was far and away the best singles they released, and arguably my favorite overall on the album. Brought my hope up, but after listening to the whole album, and I've listened to it twice now, I can honestly say, for me, this is their best album since Imaginary. Which, mind you, they've only put out 3 albums since then, including this one. So I guess that's not saying a ton, but it's, for me, it still is.
It still holds
And
merit.
yes, for sure. There were songs on here that felt like they could have been on Imaginarium and fit, for sure. Plus you mix it with Imaginarium, being my favorite Nightwish album. I think that's an absolutely incredible album from start to finish. And this album, when I was going in to listen to it, people kept saying, even Thomas himself had said that this is an album that you have to listen to the whole album. Like the singles, while you can listen to them and they're putting them out, obviously, as singles, it won't make complete sense until you listen to the whole thing.
The only reason they're throwing out singles is just because that's more record label demands and hype for the album.
Yeah, exactly. That, and of course they know the fans want to hear stuff too. So, and after listening to it, I completely see where they're coming from and where he was coming from, because while I liked most of the singles, everything works so much better is the whole of the album than things sitting apart.
Which
huh?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the wife and I had a discussion on this not too long ago, and I was telling her that, back in the day, we're talking more around the 80s of Poison era, of Poison era glam metal and whatnot. You could have singles and everything, and it could be able to stand on its own. But the way composition is becoming and the way writing is becoming, where people, I don't know if I want to say mature, but it's being thought more of as a collective. So listening to a single is going to completely throw the whole thing off, because you may not know, because it may sound just weird as shit, but once you actually listen to the whole composition of it, you begin to understand, have a better grasp of it.
Yeah, no, a decent amount of the bands that I've come across have kind of try to tell a story throughout the entirety of the album, which kind of helps along with it. You kind of need the whole album as the whole itself rather than just a single out of it.
More artists are going to concept albums. It's just, or I'm noticing that, but it's also, do a concept album whenever you are able to progress your musicianship, because if you don't have the musicianship and experience to do so, it's going to fall flat if you try and do a concept album.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true for Nightwish too. They really started doing that. I mean, they've kind of always done it, but it really started to become prevalent around Dark Passion Play and Sense. But yeah, it was definitely true for this album. I even saw, I think it was the same guy that said, compared the one song to a Dimmu song. He even, I think, said that he probably would only listen to this album in full. He probably wouldn't listen to songs individually on it, just because he says it sounds better as the whole. Even he felt that way. Now, I know Thomas said he left little Easter eggs in all the songs. I haven't listened to them enough to catch them yet. I'm sure some people have. I haven't. And I was really worried, too, coming to this album, of what it was going to be like without Marco. Because Marco was such a huge part of Nightwish and the sound of Nightwish.
I completely forgot he had left whenever I listened to it. I wasn't even thinking about that. I forgot it. It sounds odd, but you know what? Never mind.
Yeah, but that's the point, though. When you went through it, but I don't know, it was a worry, but by the end of it, I wasn't really missing him like I thought I would. Now, there was a couple songs where I was, he did some because his voice would have fit really well in a couple of these songs, but overall, I didn't feel like him not being in there, especially when he was such a huge part of their sound for so long. It didn't distract from it at all for me. I think they did a fantastic job in that regard. And I thought Yuka, the new bassist, did a great job. His bass sounded good. It sounded heavy, thick. And there was one song on here. I haven't heard anybody say it, so it might just be my ears. But there was one song where there was an undertone vocal coming in, or an extra layer vocal coming in, that did not sound at all like Troy, which any male vocals you heard on here were Troy, and they didn't sound like Floor either to me. Now, it could have been Floor. You noticed it too. I don't remember which song it was, but I haven't heard anybody else say it. I wish I could remember, so I'll have to go back and listen through it again. But there was one song where there was this other vocal that came in under Floor, and it didn't sound like her, and it did not sound like Troy. I'm curious if I'm just going crazy or who the hell that was. You know, it could have been Floor doing something with her voice, and they put it through like whatever to change the vocals a little bit.
But again, I'll get into that later.
Yeah.
That's how we do all the time. He says stuff, and I'm like,
yeah. But in the end, like for me, this was their best album since Imaginarium, and I say now top 3 of my all-time favorites from them. I would have said that about Human Nature too at first. So ask me again in 6 months, we'll see if it's still there. But I have a better feeling this one might stay there though than Human Nature did. It gives me a lot of hope for what they're going to do in the future. Also makes me kind of bummed that they're not playing this live, be doing any live shows for this album. They have talked about doing something for their 30th anniversary in 2026. I haven't said what, because obviously it's still a little ways away. I know somebody actually talked to Marco and Tarja about the 30th, and if they would be interested, if they were asked, would they be interested in being involved in a 30th anniversary? And Tarja pretty much said she would, but she wasn't 100% sure if the people left in the band, namely Impu and Tomas, would be interested. And Marco said he would be interested or would be willing, but there would need to be conversations going on, because I know he's got a lot of issues with whoever the management is with Nightwish. It's one of 3 reasons why he left the band. One was his own mental issues. One was the record label, and then I guess the management, whoever their management team is.
Well, I mean, you also consider like whenever I forget, is Floor the current vocalist or was she the former?
Floor's current.
Floor's current. Okay, so the previous one. Well, I mean,
First one.
Yeah, I mean, you remember?
It was the one. Letter.
Huh?
Tarja was the one that they kicked out with the letter.
I know that, like that. I know that probably. I know that took a toll on him, and that probably festered so much that he wasn't feeling it anymore. Even though it's been a while, I mean, it probably just got too much.
Yeah, that was 05. I know that, Marco and Tarja, since, Marco left, they've reconnected. In fact, they've been touring together. Actually, I think they're on tour right now in Europe together. And they've been playing Nightwish songs.
Oh, just because Frosty doesn't know the situation, so one of their tracks, they actually had to kick the vocalist out, and no one felt like doing it, so they literally just wrote her a letter, and was like, here. And,
yeah, after a show.
Yeah, at the show, like before the show started.
Oh wow!
And
after the
huh?
After the show ended, they gave her the letter.
Oh, after the show ended, my bad. But what had also occurred was that Marco was so distraught by it because they were like brother and sister. He cared for her deeply. And
Tomas.
Or Tomas. My God, I'm getting.
Yeah, Tomas and Tarja were like brother and sister. They were like this.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, because of the pain he felt, he said, "I'm either killing myself physically or I will kill myself lyrically." And there is a track which he'll tell you in a moment, but there is a countdown in it, and at that exact moment in the track, you hear a guillotine because he lyrically killed himself from his suffering.
Yeah, it was a song where he chose to lyrically commit suicide. It's called "The Poet and the Pendulum," And there's a point in the song where it's a spoken word part where it says there's 3 minutes and counting. And exactly 3 minutes later in the song, you hear that guillotine where he dies in the song. And it's still to this day a very emotional song for Tomas, to the point to where he won't even play it live because it's too much for him. But yeah, like he and Tarja were literally like as close as you can be without being romantically involved, you know. So it was, even today, if you ask him, it's probably still one of the hardest things he's ever done. And their friendships never recovered. I know he doesn't hold any hard feelings towards her anymore, and I know she doesn't, to my understanding and the way she talks about it, she doesn't really hold them towards him anymore. So I feel like they just need to finally just say fuck it and talk. You know, now I can't answer for Impu because Impu doesn't really talk. He's a very quiet, behind the scenes kind of guy unless he's on stage. So for me, like I said, because this is my favorite album of them since Imaginarium, I'm going to say a 9 out of 10 right now for me. Again, ask me in 6 months, I might give you a different score. I probably would.
You typically do.
Yeah, because things grow on me. But initially, I would say 9 out of 10. I wish what would tie it for the highest score I'd given.
Alright, so now we will be moving on to Frosty and your background with Nightwish, how you came to know him, whatever, your perspective of it, and what you would rate it, the album.
So, first off, Nightwish, I got introduced to roughly 2004, maybe 2005. Right around. I actually got introduced to them by a guy that I knew at the church that I was attending at the time. They were like, "Oh my God, you got to check this out!" And it was what is that? I think the song that he showed me was "End of All Hope," which I believe is one that most everybody knows. If they've even heard of Nightwish, they probably know that one.
Back then, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Trying to get the
But yeah, so End of All Hope was the very first song that I heard from them, and I was pleasantly taken aback by it. I was, because at the time I grew up kind of sheltered, so most of the stuff that my family would only let me listen to is either like Christian music, kid music, Disney music, or like country or something like that.
His world got flipped upside down whenever we introduced 3 Days Grace to him.
But at roughly about the time I started to, I found out about Nightwish was about the time that I was also starting to venture out from all my sheltered musical listenings and everything. So, I guess I started off with like some of the standard, just normal rock bands like Stained and like some Green Day here and there, 3 Days Grace, Papa Roach, some of those kind of roughly in that time period. And yeah, no, it was one that I was introduced to only because of my musical background. I've been in bands since I was like 10. So about the time I was probably maybe 13, 14 when I got introduced to Nightwish. And I had been through band and all, so like I kind of got that like symphonic, orchestral kind of like vibe going through me. Even now, a lot of the stuff that I listen to, like I have like singular or maybe like 2 or 3 songs from a specific band, not because I like the band, but because the sound in that song is very symphonic or orchestral to me, and it just I vibe well with it, I guess the best way to put it. They knew, the person that introduced me knew of my background in music, and they were like, "Hey, check this out. This is very orchestral, or this is very symphonic. Why don't you give it a go, seeing as you're trying to, venture out from your sheltered youth. So I listened to it, and it just took me by surprise. And I mean, I didn't continue to listen to the band as like as a whole. So like I probably only heard like a few songs early in, and then that was roughly about the time I met this one. And I started to venture away from that sort of stuff and kind of going towards more of like what he's listening to at the time. But I still kept some aspects of my past with my listening. I definitely don't listen to heavy as much as he does. I know that for a fact. I do listen to some, but it's just...
Well, I mean, we listened to most of the same stuff up until, like, we kind of, not drifted apart, but we just kind of had to go our own ways and everything.
Pretty much soon after high school and all that.
Yeah, and then I just kind of gradually just got heavier and heavier to where no one else was really listening to it, and so I had to pretty much go on my own way with it. And then whenever I'd introduce stuff to you, you're like, oh, this is interesting, but you never really stuck with it. But because
about the only one that I ever like kind of took to mind or whatever, kind of, I didn't immediately jump into, but like now I could listen to most any of the songs from them, is Lamb of God. Hands down. So, I mean, because at the time I think it was like Whitechapel or Bless the Fall or Impending Doom or like Suicide Silence.
Impending Doom we were heavy on, especially the Serpent album. Oh my god.
Yeah. But I mean, like you said, I didn't like fully take to it like he did, so it was like, I mean, yeah, I might have a few songs on my playlists and all that from them, but it's going to be the songs that I remember from way back when. So yeah, no, I mean, I didn't take to the heavy. I took more towards I want to vibe with the song, like the symphonic stuff or the orchestral stuff, something that's got something of a melody that, like, really not catchy per se, but like, it hits you emotionally. So that was one of the things that Nightwish had done when I had first listened to them. I also really enjoyed musicals, which is a little bit different than some of the things that this one might.
Still, the musicals we like tend to be fairly dark in nature.
True. I do like some of the happier ones and whatnot.
Sounds of music.
Yeah, but it also comes from being sheltered and listening to Disney.
What is the other one, Pippin?
No, but they did a cover of Phantom of the Opera that just, because I remember I really, really enjoyed every bit of the Phantom of the Opera, because also my mother loved Andrew Lloyd Webber, so she'd have that playing while she's like cleaning the house or anything like that. So I got kind of used to Phantom of the Opera, and then I heard their cover of Phantom of the Opera, and it was just, what is this?
Did you hear it with Hank Port?
Yeah. Did you hear the newer one that Nightwish did with Floor and Hank Port?
I don't think I have. I know I've listened to the older one.
Oh, you remember. It sent chills down my fucking spine.
According to Andrew Lloyd Webber, is the Phantom.
Oh, wow.
Like, Phantom. And I know Andrew Lloyd Webber was considered him the Phantom. And he and Floor became friends, and he actually came out and performed the song last year or the year before.
Andrew
with
Lloyd,
them.
I thought it was Hank Port.
It is Hank Port.
Andrew Lloyd. Oh, okay.
My
bad.
K.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's the writer, the composer of it.
I knew that.
Right.
My bad. Just forgive me. I've been up for like 19 hours.
But yeah, no, I haven't heard that version. I've heard the original version, so it sounds like I got something else to look at. But but yeah, no, I mean, I remember the original one. I mean, chills down my spine, hands down, and I'm guessing I'll have probably even more chills listening to the newer version.
You will. It put me in tears.
But after that, I kind of like took a step away from some of that and just try to venture out and see what all I could find, kind of on my own. Some of which was influenced, some of which was not. Uh, Maybe a little bit of like radio music and all that, but other than that, yeah. And then this album came out, and I was told I need to listen to it.
Sorry.
So I listened to it, and just wow. Like, the entirety of the album in general is, I mean, you said it, is, you know, like as a whole, works so well together. I mean, each piece kind of like, each particular song within it tells its own particular, like, chapter of the story. And it gets to that point where, by the end, when you get to, what is the name of it? Lantern Light. You know, Lantern Light fully closed out that album in such an, I almost want to say in like an ethereal kind of way.
I see that, yeah.
It's kind of what it felt to me, and it was just, it was beautifully ended. Like, each particular song in general, like, I've only listened to it once through. Not because I don't like it, but because timing. But like, each of the songs I damn sure remember are like An Ocean of Strange Islands. Like, I mean, like you said, probably one of the best songs on this album.
It better be 9 minutes fucking long.
But yeah, no, I mean, like, An Ocean of Strange Islands just was like insanely well written. I mean, I remember listening to that one, and it kind of gave me like this weird, like, Celtic kind of metal, folk metal kind of vibe behind it, and it was just, I mean, I also enjoy folk music too, so I mean, there's that. But like, just a lot of the songs in general kind of just give you that that kind of Celtic folk vibe behind it, and I really enjoyed every second of it. I got the symphonic with it, I got the orchestral with it. Bits and pieces of it kind of gave me like an ethereal vibe behind it. And maybe that's just part of the, you know, part of the chorus, the like the choir sound and all that. But like, I remember Lantern Light and Spider Silk were the two that I remember the most had that like ethereal feel behind it. So. Yeah, no, like, I mean, hands down, an insanely well-written album. Probably would definitely start looking into a little bit more into Nightwish and some of their, like, older stuff and whatnot.
I'll make him listen to Imaginarium all the way through. He'll enjoy it.
Probably. What is it? The one that I remember that kind of gave me, like, I mean, I'd said this in the car earlier, kind of gave me like a weird like 90s animated Marvel show kind of like opening scene vibe or opening theme vibe or whatever, was Something Whispered Follow Me. For some reason it had that like that weird 90s feel, early 80s feel, or late 80s feel kind of feeling to me personally. So I mean, yeah, no, I can't begin to describe how much I am far behind these two when it comes to like Nightwish and some of the other stuff.
I'm not that much further behind you, mate.
You're further ahead of me, but like at the same time,
he is, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I would definitely like listen to this album almost on repeat, just because of like, I mean, it just shocked me. Like I said, I haven't been listening to Nightwish since like, well, maybe like over 10 years ago and all that, 10 plus years ago, and I would definitely start listening more and more, especially if they start to kind of sound like this. It did almost remind me of like early Nightwish from, well, I say early, it's probably like mid 2000s area.
Yeah, when you get mid 2000s, you're talking Once album, When did I think it was the late zeros that Dark Passion Play came out. I can't remember for sure. I'd have to go look. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, some of it gave me like early Nightwish vibes.
You're
some
muted.
of it gave me more modern.
Shit. My bad. Okay,
Oh.
I did it.
So, like I said, like some of it gave me early Nightwish vibes. Some of it gave me more of a modern feel with like orchestral metal and all that. But I just in general, I would definitely listen to this more and more. I mean, if I had to give it a rating, personally, just based off of everything that I listen to in general, I'd probably give it a 9, to be honest. Yeah. I really don't necessarily know how to describe the 9, but a 9.
You don't necessarily have to go into your explanation. It's just what you perceive from it. Out of
Explanation. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I can also say, like a lot of the like Celtic feels or folk type feels, Nightwish does play a lot with that. Like songs like Alpenglow, My Walden, Harvest, songs like that have a very heavy, like folky Celtic type feel to them.
Amaranth almost gave me like that kind of vibe too on that song. I remember it was like, I actually haven't listened to it in a good second. However, like, I mean, it really did kind of give me that kind of vibe as well.
Amaranth the group?
No, the name of the song was Amaranth.
Oh, okay, my bad.
It has a song that's on Dark Passion Play
Yes.
called Amaranth. Yeah,
Alright,
it's spelled with the band as well.
Alright, I got you now. So, by the way, throughout this whole time, if there's any self-proclaimed whiskey snobs or whiskey connoisseurs that are curious, I'm Brucalotti, in case, because I feel like that's going to come up in comments. Now that that's out of the way. So, before I really get into all this, I'm simply going to say I feel like in pre-production on this album, there was literally a fucking round table where everyone sat at, and Nightwish literally went to their brother TSO and went, alright, what do you got for this? And then they're like, hey, we can do this. Opeth, what you got? And then, okay, we need some pizzazz. Elevite, Fawn, what do you have? Like, and it just, they mingled it all together, and it was just spread throughout. There was no, I mean, yes, whenever you had Sway, the opening of that was very similar to Opeth, and the male vocals was fairly along the lines of Mikhail. But,
Troy.
Troy, okay, yeah. Like I said, fairly similar to the way Mikhail does it, but also it did give me a lot of reminiscence of the male vocalist for Fawn as well. Which, if you don't know, Fawn is just straight folk. I'm bordering on saying pagan folk, but I don't know. Yeah, I think they do describe themselves as pagan folk. But for me, just typically I make notes, and timing wise with work I could not do it, so I'm mainly just having to kind of go this collectively unless something really stood out to me. So anyone who has seen our album reviews has seen that I kind of look at these albums from the perspective of an engineer, just due to my background. No, I'm not professional, I'm amateur, but still that doesn't discount anything as far as I'm concerned. What was it that you said regarding Dolby Atmos?
So apparently the album was mixed to sound best on Dolby Atmos, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, I can verify this because there was so much atmosphere in the sense of soundscapes throughout it that, yes, it would be elevated by that. So much so that, I kid you not, I swear in multiple areas, I thought there was a room mic on the fucking kick. I never hear room mics on a kick just because it's not needed. You have just the initial attack of it, and then you have just the sub bass from it. But it sounded like it was in a room, either a real room or artificial reverb, which I feel like I'm really curious as to where the drums were recorded, because I'm curious, what was this an actual room where they got all the sound, or did they blend in like reverb or echo chambers artificially into this?
Funny you mentioned that. I don't know if I can find it, but when they were recording the drums, the guy who was doing the recording actually took a photo of the room with the drum set in there. They recorded it all in. I don't know if I can find it or not. Oops. Click the right button. No, not yesterday. Yesterwynde. Is it? Not. So it looks like it was filmed as somewhat a typical. Dear God, that's a huge drum set. I never realized how big that set was. Holy crap.
Does it look like Neil Peart's set?
Hold on, let me take a picture. Okay, it might make me disappear for a minute, but I don't care. On a completely unrelated note, you mentioned Fawn.
My
Apparently
God.
they were in yesterday.
Jesus.
The size of that
Yeah.
room, yeah, okay, so they did have room mics as well, but goddamn, they have 3 overheads? At least. No, 4, because there's one there.
Mm-hmm.
So they have 4 overheads, and based on that room, they've got some other room mics, so I'm wondering if they've kind of created an artificial echo chamber to kind of supplement everything, because that kit sounded very, just like it was actually in a cathedral, or close to it. Which gave a very different kind of feel of what I've heard of Nightwish. Granted, I will admit the only Nightwish album I've heard all the way through is Imaginarium. On that statement, this felt like Imaginarium Part 2.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There were a lot of
throughout the entire thing of this, I was loving every moment, because it was like Nightwish had teamed up with TSO and decided to make another album together, like it felt Imaginarium did. And of course, whenever they brought in the elements of, like, we're gonna say LBT Fawn, Opeth, it just really made it incredible. And one of the, I know I'm gonna get hate for this, and I don't really give a fuck, to be honest, but one of the biggest things I loved about this album is Floor's vocals were not so much operatic as they were. It was just the vocalization of the mezzo-soprano range.
You know, it's funny you say that, because a lot of people have brought that up. Not necessarily in a bad way. I haven't seen anybody said it that way, but there have been several people who have said this very easily could have been an Annette album. Like, she could have sung this out, which Annette did Imaginarium.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because I mean, so much of this felt like Imaginarium, and the main things that I've heard from Nightwish is just, it's very operatic, which for those that enjoy it, absolutely, but for me, I'm not the biggest on operatics, unless there's like a touch of it, or there's something to kind of provide a different, I hate saying texture, because that's become a pretentious term in my opinion, the layering of it gives that kind of layer and makes it fascinating. But whenever it's done throughout the entire thing, it just kind of loses me, and not in a trance sort of way, but it just, my mind goes elsewhere. But I will say, on that note, the discussions that people had of the vocals being mixed too low, there were moments whenever I thought they were, and I can understand the reasoning from the artistic perspective of being able to hear each aspect of the instrumentals individually. I'm going to say that's a bit of a... That sounds like a musician who got an idea, and it's the idea that engineers have to run with. As in, you have to make potentially 5 or 6 pieces of a group or an ensemble fit together and do so in a way that you can hear everything. That's the fucking job of an engineer, amongst other aspects. But considering that you wanted to lower vocals to make everything else heard, that also comes across to me as you were short on time. You didn't want to have to bother with adjusting levels, adjusting EQ to be able to bring out harmonics between the individual instruments, and you're just like, fuck it, we'll lower this, raise this, or just automate it, and then we'll go with it. We'll run with it, print it. Which, I'm not saying it's a lazy maneuver, it's unconventional. It worked. I actually did enjoy it just because the vocals were there enough to where you could hear everything, and they were, in the context of this album, they didn't shy too far away from how a lot of other metal albums are engineered, in the sense that probably about 5 or 8, within the span of 5 or 8 years ago, vocals to me have sat so low in the mix. But then again, I'm also 80s, 90s, and some of the early 2000s metal where the vocals were much more prominent, and everything else you had to put harmonics in it to make it cut through the mix, and so that's what I'm used to. So
one thing I can say is Troy did an interview where he talked about, because he was involved in like the engineering and all that. Of course, Tomas himself was heavily involved in the mixing and everything, and the mastering and whatnot. He said the exact amount of time that they spent engineering, mixing, mastering this album. I don't remember what it was, but it was a significant amount of time. Apparently, they went back a couple times, like thinking they were done. Nope, went back and worked on it some more, and then went back.
Well, I mean, whenever you're, because it's one thing to have just your solid foundation of the instrumentals, the vocals, and then a couple reverb aspects to fill out the negative space. However, whenever you start to bring soundscapes into it that would allow Dolby Atmos to be able to actually be worthwhile, that brings in a whole new element that not many people run with. So that doesn't surprise me that they spent a shitload of time. And I'm wondering, in a way, if they've added those sounds, if they created that atmosphere with those soundscapes as a way to counteract or to act as a counterbalance or counterweight to the absence of Marco.
I don't know. It's a good question. I can't answer that one.
Yeah, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Marco keys?
No, Marco was the bassist. Tomas is the keyboard.
Oh my god, I can't fucking get anyone together in this group.
That's okay, I don't even know the names.
Okay, well, then that just completely slams away my theory on that. Anyways, which on that subject, the bass was phenomenal. I greatly enjoyed how that was, which that might explain how, for a moment, I thought that the kicks had room to them, as far as like recording literally the room of where the kick is. But then I started wondering, granted time alignment will do this as well, but were they that precise with the bass and the kick to where the bass actually did a psychoacoustic of adding room to the kick? So
it surprised me, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, because I mean, of course, it's hard for me to be able to say whether someone is naturally that talented these days, or whether it was the glorious talent of a mouse clicking away, trying to timeline everything.
Absolute beast on the drum as is, like the dudes.
Yeah, I mean, the drummer, there's no way around it. The dude is phenomenal at drums. Absolutely. Like, I have not disregarding that at all. But yeah, as a whole, this album was phenomenal, and each track had its own story to tell, as Frosty mentioned, but yet it still fit within the collective composition of what they were doing. And it's kind of rare to find that in going in. How many tracks are there on this album?
Well,
plus the orchestral version.
So 12 tracks, and you're able to split up each track's, I guess I'll use a modern term, vibe, to be able to create some separation, but yet still follow that same composition within a concept. From someone who could be an engineer to make all this collect and work together, but yet, just as amateur musician and half-assed musician myself, and like, that's incredible, like, absolutely phenomenal. So again, this also goes back to where this felt like Imaginarium for me, because that was nothing more than just a collective masterpiece. But yeah, I'm gonna keep going on and on. I was wanting to give individual ideas on these tracks, but I don't remember what the fuck's what because I wasn't able to take notes. So I'll just say, for my rating, I gave, actually, hold up, I did remember on the Children of Ada, at the end, whenever the underlying vocalization was going on, I don't know if they just lowered it so much and allowed the reverb to kind of fill in and make more of the vocal. It almost sounded like they had a bit of autotune in one section, not the entire part, but one section, because it sounded like there was a glottal attack in the vocal, but there was a smooth transition in that glottal attack, and I'm like, that doesn't happen naturally. Or if it does, I haven't heard it very often. So I'm wondering if either they allowed the reverb to kind of carry that nicely, or if they auto-tuned just small little sections to carry that to where it wouldn't go, huh!
I don't know. I can't. I'd have to listen to it again.
Again, I'm coming at all this from the perspective of an engineer, and like, how did they do that? Wow, that really worked well. Whoa, wasn't expecting that. And just, that was pretty much my attitude throughout this whole fucking album. But going away from that, outstanding work. I have to rate this 8.5 out of 10. And I'd say I can't give a 9 because I feel like in what they were trying to do, some of it, I feel like it lost me, and it felt a bit too unnatural. Mainly because, like, with some of the vocalization, it sat a little too low in the mix at times. And, of course, that ending vocalization, where it was a little, but that's just nitpicking. I mean, I probably actually could go as far as say 8 3/4, but yeah, it was nothing less than a solid 8 for me. If money was no object, I absolutely would have this album just because of how phenomenal it was. I did not particularly care for the last track, even though I loved the way it closed out, because it gave the ending sample of a film reel to say this is the end of the production.
I remember, I think I did have a vibe of like some sort of metal that you might see in a cinema at one point throughout the album, listening to it. So,
yeah.
I mean, I can easily see the cinematic feel at the very end as well.
Yeah,
well, that's a common thing with Tomas too. He's a composer. He's not necessarily a songwriter. He's a composer, is what he is. And
which is what makes most of their material perform so nicely.
I could see him at some point before he retires from music doing or even getting into film scores.
I hope he doesn't, because he's doing fucking phenomenal what he's doing now, and I don't want that to be molested by the film industry.
He's always had a love for film scores. If he did it, I think it'd be something he would do on the side for fun. And obviously, knowing him,
Don't tell me he's gonna be the headliner at Sundance.
no, he would want full control over what he could do musically for the
Okay,
score.
I was about to say, as long as he has full control.
Well, I was gonna say, well, maybe he'd do like some sort of like score to not necessarily some like Hollywood A-list movie or something, but like something similar like Repo the Genetic Opera or like Rocky Horror or something like
I was about to say
benign that not everybody's gonna go see or something.
I was about to say the way
like,
Rob Zombie made his films. Why doesn't he kind of partner with someone that would make an independent film like that, but be so popular within the community that it could be seen as just like this one-off or a good straight-to-DVD aspect.
Yeah.
But I mean, knows when it's because he's, the dude's got 3 bands, so mind you, the one I don't know when and if they'll ever do anything else, but nonetheless, he technically has 3 bands, so.
Yeah, but so again, going off of some of the aspects you mentioned earlier to me, because honestly, I wasn't keeping in mind to listen to this album just because Nightwish typically isn't my thing, so I just kind of like, oh, okay, I'll check it out, whatever you may mention. But whenever you had said, someone had made the comment that this is an album for Opeth fans, I'm like, you set a high bar there, what do you got? And so that's whenever I started listening, and I'm like, okay. And after I had completely heard the album,
I have to get another.
Anyways,
you're good.
Okay, after I completely heard the album, and Frosty was listening, like had it playing in the car. As soon as I got back in the car, my wife goes, "It sounds like they collaborated with Opeth," and I'm like, her too. She got it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because like the one first review I ever read said that fans of Opeth would probably like this. So.
Yeah, which I see where they got that from. Which actually, my wife also mentioned that she was hearing some Evanescence in it, and I'm like, I can absolutely hear some Evanescence. Like, it may not be more later Evanescence, but definitely earlier material.
I could see, like Heat with Lantern Light. There's another one.
Even the way, because you know how Amy Lee, she won't necessarily be operatic, but she'll go to that mezzo-soprano range and be able to hold a vowel or be able to hold a melody like that, the same way that Flora will do.
Mm-hmm.
So I can easily see where she found that, and I can absolutely agree to that measure. But yeah, Sway was that way, and then there were a few others where it was whenever they kind of slowed down and almost got a little jazzier, a little progressive. And I don't mean to say progressive as in just strictly jazzy. It's coming away from what they're doing, and for a moment they kind of slip into another kind of subgenre almost.
Yeah, I was gonna say roughly around Spider Silk is where I kind of started to feel that.
Yeah, so it's like just that aspect of being able to transition like that, but still be able to make it flow that fucking well and work, and be able to everyone just kind of keep up with the groove and the jam. That's an Opeth thing, in my eyes. That's an Opeth thing, hands down.
Yeah, they did that on Imaginarium too. Another tie into Imaginarium.
Again, which is partly why I love that fucking album. But yeah, I still have to stick with 8.5 because I gave Judas Priest album 9. So, and for me, just the Priest album was a little bit better. They were fairly on par, but like I said, I gave 8.5, 9, so half point difference. But yeah, so this was our collective thoughts on Nightwish's latest album. Because I don't remember, I already forgot what it's called.
Yesterwynde.
Alright, gentlemen, so any other further thoughts, ideas, lamentations?
No, I think that's it for me.
Correct.
You know how bad I am at ending these videos. Alright, well, guys, until next time, where Frosty will be with us and we'll be kind of doing more of a deep dive into his joining, we will catch you in the next one. And as always, keep rolling heavy, because I almost forgot to say X. I almost forgot how it went.